In the last need, Smeagol, I should put on the precious, and the precious mastered you long ago. If I, wearing it, were to command you, you would obey, even if it were to leap from a precipice or to cast yourself into the fire. And such would be my command. So have a care, Smeagol.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we're reading Book 4, Chapter 3, The Black Gate is Closed. My name is Logan.
And my name is Zach.
Zach, we have finally arrived at the place where we've been trying to arrive. It's called Mordor.
The Black Gate.
Welcome to Mordor, Zach.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the attitude of Frodo and Sam. It's kind of like, all right, here we are. We've been saying that this is our purpose for, a long time. But now that we're actually here, it's very unclear what our plan was from the very beginning. Like, all right, we're here.
But we actually don't know what we're doing.
Like, what was Gandalf or Aragorn or Elrond, like all these wise people, like what were they actually expecting us to do? And it seems like at one point Frodo's just like, all right, time to get going. And Smeagol rightly is just kind of like, are you out of your mind? Like, You can't get past that thing. And Tolkien spends quite a bit of time describing just how immeasurably strong this gate is and how impassable it is. And so, like, what do you think they were planning on doing once they got there? Or did they have a plan at all about what they were planning on doing when they got there?
Gandalf or Frodo and Sam?
Both. I mean, I guess Gandalf. Let's start with him. I mean, what did he think they were going to do when they got there?
I think Gandalf's plan was the same as Smeagol's plan.
To take the kind of like secret way.
Yeah, except without, the whole like Shelob detour. But whether they took the exact same way or, some other way that Gandalf knew about, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I mean, you're not going to just walk through the gate. Or maybe his plan was to like similarly sort of like create some kind of diversion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
While there's a big battle going on, you do your best to get there.
Which is what they do, essentially after the Battle of Pelennor Fields. They say, like, let's make a distraction.
Right.
This kind of reminds me a lot of The Hobbit. Reading it as an adult, I read it one more time through right before we started the podcast, just to kind of refamiliarize myself with the story. And my main takeaway from The Hobbit, and I'm sure this will come up if we ever read The Hobbit together on the podcast, but I wrote like really big in the margins, what exactly is the plan? They get to Smaug's lair, and then what? Like, are they going to take the gold out like one piece at a time? Like, how is Bilbo, a burglar, supposed to burgle this incredible hoard of gold and jewels and without Smaug noticing? Like, what exactly were they planning on doing? And it kind of comes up in the text, which I was surprised by. Like, I had the question, and then pretty clearly someone else articulates it. I can't remember which one of the dwarves. We're like, all right, what do we, or maybe it's Bilbo himself. It's kind of like, all right, like, we're here. Like, what exactly was your plan? Like, clearly I'm not supposed to take this out piecemeal.
Right.
But I kind of had the same question here. I'm like, all right, what exactly were they planning on doing when they got here?
And I think that like there's sort of a wider theme or something in the book where, like, for Tolkien, faithfulness is kind of about showing up, and then the forces that are arrayed against you will react, or you'll kind of come up with something, or you're sort of like your willingness to show up is going to be met by like, it's going to be like graced by like God's intervention or something. And so I think that it kind of doesn't matter what your plan was, because the plan is probably going to go sideways anyway.
Yeah.
Right, which has already happened several times
So many times.
in this
Yeah.
book. And so Frodo and Sam, going to the gate, it's like the only thing they know to ask, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Smeagol says, like, well, you never asked me. Like, you never said go somewhere other than the gate. Like, I don't know what you're trying to do. You just said bring me to the gate, so I brought you to the gate. Nice Smeagol.
Yeah. Good Smeagol. Nice Smeagol.
And so, like, I think Frodo and Sam never thought to, like, ask a different kind of question.
Uh-huh.
And maybe they didn't really understand the, like, full weight of what it means, like what Mordor means. And how could they really?
Mm-mm.
So maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't think Frodo and Sam have any kind of plan. They're just putting one foot in front of the other and
trusting that some way will be made.
Yeah.
Or that they'll just walk faithfully to their death.
Yeah, Frodo seems to be pretty comfortable with that. He's described, at least when he's sleeping, he's described over these next two chapters as having kind of a peaceful visage or something.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A light that shines.
Right, and sleeping soundly. And so it's kind of like Frodo is just like living one step to the next. And if they die, they die,
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like he's saying, like, I didn't promise to succeed in my quest. I promised to try. That space between, like, your willingness to try and your ability to achieve the thing that you're trying, powers beyond yourself fill that gap.
Even a character like Smeagol, when combined with Frodo and Sam's kind of faithfulness or willingness to show up in the way that they do, can, like, lead to an end, which is ultimately good.
Do you want to read this paragraph that's kind of describing the battlements that they're about to face? I think, this really kind of kicks off the chapter, and just really sets the tone of just how impossible this task is.
This was Cirith Gorgor, the haunted pass, the entrance to the land of the enemy. High cliffs lowered upon either side, and thrust forward from its mouth were two sheer hills, black-boned and bare. Upon them stood the teeth of Mordor, two towers strong and tall. In days long past they were built by the men of Gondor in their pride and power, after the overthrow of Sauron and his flight, lest he should seek to return to his old realm. But the strength of Gondor failed, and men slept, and for long years the towers stood empty.
And then it says, then Sauron returned. Now the watchtowers which had fallen into decay were repaired and filled with arms, and garrisoned with ceaseless vigilance. Stony-faced they were, with dark window holes, staring north and east and west, and each window was full of sleepless eyes.
I mean, this is pretty impressive, right? That, like, from one cliff to the other cliff, there's this huge rampart that's been built into the stone. And you get the impression that it's not as sort of beautifully made as the battlements at Helm's Deep, but it's still really impressive.
Yeah, it spans this whole chasm, yeah.
Yeah, and there's this huge single gate of iron. And then the thing is constantly manned by orcs, in contrast to what Gondor allowed to happen, which was that they stopped manning these towers.
Yeah, as the kingdom of Gondor waned, the enemy was able to move in. And so it's like at one point, Gondor was able to build these things and maintain it to prevent Sauron from coming back in. But now they have lost their vigilance, and it's been replaced with Sauron's vigilance.
Is it accurate to say that every tower that appears in the two towers, as well as, some of the larger structures in the Fellowship, like the statues at the Argonath, are all built in a age gone by?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
So maybe the powers that be in the world now don't have the capacity to build anything like these towers anymore.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
The dwarves could work to repair it, but I think that it's like, I think the best comparison would be if you are a medieval monk in the British Isles and you're walking along and you see an aqueduct,
A Roman aqueduct.
and you think to yourself, what, like, what minds,
Yeah, how'd they do that?
how could they possibly have achieved this thing? Or, you're pushing your cart along a road with enormous stones laid without a seam, and you're like, I can barely, you know, keep a, path laid in the area, like a muddy path that before my house maintained, much less lay these enormous like roads. Like, how could they possibly have done this? I think that's what
Must have been giants or something like that, you know?
yeah, I think that's what he's leaning on. I mean, also, to this day, we kind of do that. We're kind of like, how could someone possibly have built the pyramids, or how could someone possibly have built Stonehenge? We're still kind of befuddled by the capabilities of people in the past. And this kind of gets at the fact that in Tolkien's worldview, like, he's not a progressive. Like, he doesn't think that we are on a like climb towards, greater achievements. He thinks that our greatest achievements are in the past, and we, because of sin, essentially are in a state of constant decline towards death. And that's really part of what, like, one of the main themes of this entire book is decay and death, and a greater age passing onto a new set of stewards. I wanted to read this sentence here because I thought it was particularly chilling, but also just really beautifully written. None could pass the teeth of Mordor and not feel their bite, unless they were summoned by Sauron, or knew the secret passwords that would open the Morannon, the black gate of this land. None could pass its teeth without feeling its bite, unless they were summoned by Sauron. What a beautiful,
I like that a lot,
construction. Yeah, they're not supposed to be here. This is the greatest peril that they have faced. They are getting like dangerously close to the fire, and they're like about to stick their hand right into it. And that's kind of where we find them as they start kind of their debate about what to do next year.
I think Sam's, this is so Sam, his little declaration once they get there. Well, here we are, said Sam. Here's the gate, and it looks to me as if that's about as far as we're ever going to get. My word, but the gaffer would have a thing or two to say if he saw me now.
It's so interesting that he always hears his dad's voice in the back of his head.
Yeah.
Like when he's about to do something stupid. I just love, he says, often said I'd come to a bad end if I didn't watch my step, he did. But now I don't suppose I'll ever see the old fellow again. He'll miss his chance to say I told you so, Sam. More's the pity. And he says he could go on telling me as long as he'd had got breath, if only I could see his old face again.
So I don't think the gaffer's a very good dad. I think he's kind of it's not abuse, but it's not very, like, I don't know, man. It's like, what a hard dude, like, to have as a dad. He's just
calling him a dumbass all the time, and so Sam internalizes that in his own.
Although I think it's, and we talked last episode or the episode before about, Samwise kind of means like dunderhead or whatever, but
Ninny Hammer.
Yeah, Ninny Hammer. But I think it kind of underscores the idea here that, like, first of all, Sam would if not for Frodo, at least up until this point, Sam would always choose to just go back to the Shire.
Yeah.
Like, every time.
Yeah.
But he will always show up for his friends, and particularly for Frodo.
He's got a job to do, and he's a worker.
Yeah. And so, like, if he has that task before him and he has something to be loyal to and a person to show up for, he always will, every time.
Yeah.
And he wants to go back to the Shire, even though he's got this dad back there who's not a very nice person. And
he's like, man, if only I could see his old face again.
Yeah, like, that would be better than, like, staring into the teeth of this, like, horrible battlement, It's just so characteristically him.
When Frodo introduces himself and Sam to Faramir for the first time, he says, I'm Frodo, son of Drogo, and this is Samwise, son of Hamfast. And I was just reminded that in Old English, Hamfast means like someone who stays at home,
Mm-hmm.
like a homebody.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the gaffer wouldn't be caught dead out here. This is not, that's the nature of these little guys. They like to be at home. And, as they're trudging through these forests coming up, they're going to start thinking about like home. Like they just really want to be home. There's something about the forest of Ithilien that gives them, I think, maybe like a little bit of taste of home.
Yeah, it reminds them of the Shire. Yeah.
And, they start thinking about food, and it, ultimately is their undoing, because they take some risks just to have a good meal.
Yeah, Sam does at least.
But yeah, Hamfast, he holds a large like space in Sam's mind, and kind of can't get his dad's voice out of his head, which I think is probably true for all of us too, in some way. I love Sam says, I suppose it's no good asking, what way do we go now? We can't go no further unless we want to ask the orcs for a lift. So he's like, all right, what's the plan here, guys?
Sam is also indefatigable. Like he just like always has this little hobbit
Cheek. He has cheek
humor, like,
yeah.
And Merry and Pippin are the same way, right? Like they're always going to find like something funny or kind of like lighthearted about whatever situation they're in, which is why, which is why Gandalf kind of says like every wizard should have a hobbit with him to remind him, what it is to like stay grounded or whatever. I can't get enough of the hobbitry. I think it's the best thing about the whole book.
It's great. But Smeagol here kind of shifts into his like kind of pitiful, sycophantic,
he's fawning, yeah.
His fawning, like stinker slinker kind of like voice here. He goes, no use. We can't go further. Smeagol said so. He said, we'll go to the gate and then we'll see. And we do see. Oh, yes, my precious, we do see. Smeagol knew hobbits could not go this way. Oh, yes, Smeagol knew.
He's so much less sympathetic here than he is in the movie. In the movie, Andy Serkis brings so much humanity to that character. And here, I'm like, man, we got to get away from this guy.
I mean, is like, he does have like a weird cuteness that Serkis, I think, taps into. There is something about him he's a funny character, and he was funny in The Hobbit too.
Yeah, he is funny, and he's sort of he's so unique. Like there's not another character really like him. But geez, like every time he talks, I'm just like, man, this guy. At least on this reading, I maybe I haven't felt that way in the past, but on this reading, I really have been like kind of grossed out by Smeagol.
Sam's response to this is so Sam. He's like, "What in the plague did you bring us here for?" And Smeagol again is just like, Master says so. Master says bring us to the gate. So good Smeagol does so. Master said so. Wise Master.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier about, what do they have a plan? And Frodo says, I did say so. His face was grim and set but resolute. He was filthy, haggard, and pinched with weariness. But he cowered no longer, and his eyes were clear. I said so because I purposed to enter Mordor, and I know no other way. Therefore I shall go this way. I do not ask anyone to go with me. Frodo's always trying to leave all of his friends behind.
Yeah, try as he might.
That's been true for 600 pages.
And that's like the original oath that they make in Rivendell. Elrond is like, nobody is bound to go any further than they will.
Yeah.
And he almost doesn't let them swear an oath to go all the way to Mordor with Frodo. Like at the end of the day, Frodo's really the only one who has sworn to enter into this final stage.
Do Merry and Pippin and Sam have their own kind of hobbit oath, though, at Buckland? They sort of say, like, we're coming with you whether you like it or not. I think that's kind of a Hobbit oath in a way.
Yeah, that's as close to an oath as they can give. You know, not even unspoken. It's just like, you know, you'll have to tie me up in a sack.
Yeah. And I think Merry and Pippin would be here now if they could, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely they would.
And frankly, probably Legolas and Gandalf and Aragorn too, if they'd had the chance. If you know, if they'd been better at choosing after being Lothlorien, what the next step was. But yeah, Frodo, he doesn't want to risk other people's lives, but he's very courageous about his own self. I think it's interesting that, you know, Smeagol is not up for that because he cares, well, because he's addicted to the ring. But he says, you know, this long kind of give the precious to me. Like, don't take it to him. Don't let him have it. And he says, Smeagol will keep it safe. He'll do lots of good, especially to nice hobbitses. Hobbits go home. Don't go to the gate.
I think this is a really important moment in the entire story. So Gollum hears Frodo say the words, I purpose to enter Mordor and I know no other way. And he begins to kind of grovel. You know, he's pawing at his legs and says he's in great distress. And he goes, no use that way. No use. Don't take the precious to him, capital H. He'll eat us all if he gets it. Eat all the world. Go away to nice places and give it back to little Smeagol. So little Smeagol, you know, he's using this like kind of diminutive word for himself. And he goes, yes, master. Give it back, eh? Smeagol will keep it safe, and he will do lots of good, especially to nice hobbits. Hobbits go home. Don't go to the gate. And Frodo responds, I am commanded to go to the land of Mordor, and therefore I shall go. What comes after must come.
Yeah, commanded is an interesting word there, right?
Yeah. I mean, that, you know, by whom, I guess. You know, he's not commanded by Gandalf and Elrond. He takes this task on his own, of his own will. He's not forced to do it by anyone. So that command, I think, is almost like internal. He sees this as like a divine purpose that he's going to follow.
Yep. Sam's reaction really stuck out to me here too. Sam sees that Frodo is resolute about this.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, he thinks to himself, you know, like, words are going to be useless. Anything I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, it says, and after all, he never had any real hope in the affair from the beginning. But being a cheerful hobbit, he had not needed hope, as long as despair could be postponed. And now they came to a bitter end. But again, as we were saying, like, he stuck with his master. That's what he came for, to stick with Frodo. I'm not going to leave Frodo.
Yeah, it's almost got this sense of like, well, we've come this far. Like, you know, what am I going to do? Walk all the way back to the Shire by myself in the wilderness? Like, let's see this thing through. I got a job to do, and I don't like it, but I'm going to do it. But Gollum, he starts to get desperate. And that's when he reveals that there's another way.
Yeah, he's got that plan in mind, right?
He goes, there is another way. Oh, yes, indeed there is. Another way, darker, more difficult to find, more secret. But Smeagol knows it. Let Smeagol show you. And Sam and Frodo immediately kind of see through this and are skeptical. They're suspicious. And Frodo's like, another way? You know, essentially like, why didn't you mention anything about this before? And Smeagol says, yes, indeed, there was another way. Smeagol found it. Let's go and see if it's still there. Smeagol almost like begins to like take Frodo's words and kind of twist them to his own purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
He goes, Master did not ask. Master did not say what he meant to do. He does not tell poor Smeagol. So he's kind of like, hey, I'm in the dark here. You know, you guys have your plans, but I'm not included in them. He says, Smeagol, take me to the gate, and then goodbye. Smeagol can run away and be good. But now he says, I purpose to enter Mordor this way. So Smeagol is very afraid. He does not want to lose nice Master. And he promised, Master made him promise to save the precious. But Master is going to take it to him, straight to the Black Hand. So Smeagol must save them both. And he thinks of another way that there is, once upon a time. Nice, master. Smeagol, very good. Always helps. So he says here kind of out loud. So he, just a minute ago, he said to Frodo, hey, you know what? Like, you've done such a great job. And you did what you promised to do, essentially. Like you said, that was your purpose to get to Mordor. Congratulations. You're here. Why don't you just give it to me? And then I'll take care of it. And right now here he says, I promised to save the precious. And that's what I'm going to do. And I can save you at the same time. Like, why don't you just give me this thing? And that's not what he promised.
He promised buy the precious to
serve
Frodo. Yeah.
It's interesting, like what he's choosing, how he's choosing to characterize what it is that he promised an oath to, what he swore to do. Because it's clear that he has, and we saw this last chapter, he has twisted the words of his promise to his own end. So he has to kind of create this like kind of double speak, this sort of like justification in his own mind of how he's not breaking his promise. And so it says here, it goes, and he promised, Master made him promise to save the precious, but Master is going to take it to him straight to the Black Hand if Master will go this way. So Smeagol must save them both. So if we look back 20 pages or so in my edition, back in the Taming of Smeagol chapter, Smeagol is being burned by the rope around his ankle, and he's making a huge ruckus, loud noise. And he asks him to take the rope off. And Frodo's like, we can't take the rope off unless you can swear some sort of oath that we can trust. Smeagol, Gollum, he swears on basically the only thing that he cares about, which is the ring.
Right.
And he says, we'll swear on the precious. And Frodo, he says, it will hold you, but it is more treacherous than you are. It may twist your words. Beware.
It's really interesting.
And that's after he quotes the last line of the ring verse, which is, and in the darkness bind them. He warns him that he will be bound by this promise that he's going to make, because the ring itself is so powerful. But Gollum, he promises two things. First, he says, Smeagol will be very, very good. He says Smeagol will swear never, never to let him have it. So with a capital H. Never. Smeagol will save it. And this is when Frodo says, speak your promise. And he says, I will serve the master of the precious. Good master, good Smeagol. So, and Frodo accepts this oath that he makes. So in Gollum's mind, he has promised to save the precious, to keep it from going back to the Dark Lord. But he has also promised to serve the master of the precious. And in his own mind, he has like created the scenario where he is going to save the ring by becoming the master of the precious. He himself will be the master, Lord Gollum.
So I think all that goes to show that this dissembling that Smeagol is undertaking here,
it's a great word for it,
is something that he like really believes that he really believes that he promised to save the precious, to keep it safe, to keep it away from Sauron. I don't think it's sufficient just to say like he's kind of a liar.
Which he is, but yeah.
I mean, he's a liar, but like
he believes his own lie.
He's a liar. He's so addicted to the ring that his lies like cut to the core of who he is, And so when he says to Frodo that I swear by the precious, he truly swears, like in his heart, he truly does swear to keep the precious safe for himself. No matter what he says out loud, there's a background, right? Oath that's happening to himself and to his own addiction. And Sam even kind of sees this in a way. He says, or it says, that if he could have bored holes in Gollum with his eyes, he would have done. To all
Mm-hmm.
appearances, Gollum was genuinely distressed. Think, I think he is genuinely distressed because he doesn't want to see the ring fall into the hands of Sauron, where he knows he'll never be able to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Sam also has in his head the debate
Mm-hmm.
between
Which he
Slinker and
overheard
between
himself.
Slinker and Stinker, or Gollum and Smeagol, or Gollum and Gollum's self, as however you want to characterize that. And this is where we kind of get this first mention of Slinker and Stinker, the halves of Smeagol and Gollum. He sees that these two halves have made this. It calls it a temporary alliance.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want the enemy to get the ring. He wished to keep Frodo from capture, but the ulterior motive is that he has a chance of laying hands on the ring. Sam kind of doubts that there's another way into Mordor. Like, why would there be? But I mean, Sam also doesn't know anything about it, really. But at the same time, Gollum is also their only hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he realizes, like, all right, we don't trust this guy farther than we can throw him, and we shouldn't, but he has knowledge that we don't have. And so we're going to almost like kind of let him think that we believe him, even though I know for a fact that I've heard him talk about betraying us.
And there is something still useful about Smeagol's oath,
Mm-hmm.
or his like fealty, right, to the ring and to his own addiction to the ring, that the hobbits can use, or that gives them some kind of like clear direction or something like that.
Yeah. Do you think that Sam wrote this line in the book that we're reading now? Frodo did not answer Gollum at once. While these doubts were passing through Sam's slow but shrewd mind, he stood gazing out towards the dark cliff of Cirith Gorgor. Do you think that Sam wrote that, or do you think that Frodo wrote Sam's slow, shrewd mind?
I don't think Sam is ashamed of being simple. Someone can be shrewd without being like, like intelligent in a complicated way or something. And in fact, there's a way in which like shrewdness is closer to wisdom than intelligence. And I think Sam would really, as a hobbit and as the kind of person he is, would really see that as a strength. So
They see men from the Eastlands gathering to the summons of their overlord, armies that had encamped before his gate by night and were now marching in to swell his mounting power. And so, even if they were to try somehow to get in this way, there's literal armies of men who are between them and the gate.
yeah,
And so I think that's kind of the breaking point where Frodo is like, all right, we really don't have any other choice. But he says, I will trust you once more. Indeed, it seems that I must do so. And he says, let's be honest. There were 2 times now that we have been asleep and you have not killed us in our sleep. So he goes, twice you have had a chance to kill us and you've shown us no harm. And so may the 3rd time prove the best. And he goes, but I warn you, you are in danger. And Smeagol's response is, yes, dreadful danger. They're looking out on this army of Eastlanders and this sentinel guarded gate of immeasurable power. And he goes, oh yeah, like, duh.
Yeah, I see
like,
it, right?
It's like, yeah, I'm in danger. And this is when I think Frodo takes kind of a dark turn.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I did not mean the danger that we all share. I mean a danger to yourself alone. You swore a promise by what you call the precious. Remember that. I will hold you to it, but it will seek a way to twist it to your own undoing. Already you have been twisted. You revealed yourself to me just now foolishly. Give it back to Smeagol, you said. Do not say that again. Do not let that thought grow in you. You will never get it back, but the desire of it may betray you to a bitter end. You will never get it back. In the last need, Smeagol, I should put on the precious, and the precious mastered you long ago. If I, wearing it, were to command you, you would obey. even if it were to leap from a precipice or to cast yourself into the fire. And such would be my command. So have a care, Smeagol.
Mm-hmm. Of course, he does cast himself into the fire, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, I'm becoming more and more convinced in my own mind that the breaking of the oath is what leads to Gollum being, you know, it's unclear how he falls into the fire. He's not pushed, but I do think he is compelled to fall into the fire precisely because of this curse that Frodo puts on him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, if you betray me, I'll command you to leap from a precipice and you'll do it. And that's exactly what happens.
Right. Sam, sees Frodo in kind of a new light here.
Yeah. I don't think he necessarily likes what he sees.
Well, he does. It does say he looked at his master with approval. So he approves of the fact that he's
like, it's about time, baby.
that he's disciplining Smeagol, but he's also surprised because there's a look on Frodo's face and a tone in his voice that he's never seen before. I think this is the effect of the ring on Frodo.
Mm-hmm.
Because he believes that there was always a kindness to Mr. Frodo and maybe even like a blindness because he's like so kind that he can't see how dissembling Smeagol is and Gollum. And I love this line where he says, he also firmly held the incompatible belief that Mr. Frodo was the wisest person in the world, with the possible exception of old Mr. Bilbo and Gandalf. But he's abashed and terrified by this speech.
Mm. He is terrified by it. And he's convinced that Gollum mistook Frodo's kindness for like blindness.
Yeah, that's right. And the speech really puts Smeagol in his place. It says he's abashed and terrified.
Mm.
He groveled on the ground and could speak no clear words, but nice master.
Mm.
And then Frodo, he says, okay. He's sort of convinced that he's put Smeagol in his place and says, if there's another way, show us, because there's a plain path ahead of me where I just like walk into doom and I would follow it. And that goes back to what we were talking about before, that like Frodo is like very willing to die at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he's in haste and he's trying to get where he's going. And if Gollum can show him the path, and like, so be it, basically.
Mm-hmm. So Frodo's like, as I see it now, based on the information you've given us, there are 3 paths into Mordor. There's the direct path straight from Minas Tirith across the bridge into Osgiliath.
Right.
Where the forces of Mordor will cross before the Battle of Pelennor Fields. There's the Black Gate, which is where they were planning on entering. But now he's like, but now you're telling us there's this third way. And so Gollum explains that there's a road to the left. At once it begins to climb up, winding and climbing back towards the tall shadows. When it turns around the black rock, you'll see it. Suddenly you'll see it above, and you'll want to hide. So they're coming to this old fortress, which has been called the Tower of the Moon, which is a tower that Isildur built and had fallen ultimately into the hands of the Nazgul and kind of became their dark, haunted tower. And they're going to essentially go like that direction, but slip past it and go up this winding stair that is, we know now where Shelob kind of stands in between that stair and the entry into the Black Land.
This brings us to something I was wondering about that I have no idea what the answer is. Sam says, doesn't the enemy know all about these mountains and how could the tower be empty? And Gollum says, oh no, it isn't empty. It seems like it's empty, but it's not.
Yeah, no way. Yeah.
Actually, it's like really horrible things live there. There's always orcs. And even worse things live up there too. It says nothing moves on the road that they don't know about. The things inside know, the silent watchers. Okay, so what's a silent watcher?
I think when we get to it, that'll become apparent. They are these like statues at the entrance to this,
Oh,
haunted tower that Frodo feels drawn towards and almost like sucked in, like they have like a gravitational kind of pull, and they have to pull Frodo away from them when they start going up this winding stair.
right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but Sam just kind of hates this plan because he's just like, all right, so here we are with a kind of a plain road, even though it feels impossible. But you're suggesting that we walk, I think they say it's like 30 leagues, so like 90 more miles to another guarded, watched, similarly dangerous road. And Gollum essentially says, well, we can't get in here, so we have to just kind of go there and see. And we have to try. He doesn't expect an attack that way. Like the reason why this is so guarded is because he's expecting this to be the place where an army would march. So he goes, he can't see everything all at once, not yet.
Yeah, I like that Sauron is not omniscient, right?
No,
He
no,
it, he says that he attends to some places more than others. He can't see everything all at once. And so, things can distract him. And in some ways Smeagol also understands something that Sauron doesn't, which is that there's a more subtle way to move through the world than the way, that
yeah,
Sauron does.
yeah. There's also the implication that if he does get the ring, then he will be able to see everything all at once. But Sam is just like, are we supposed to walk up to their gate and ask if we're on the right road to Mordor? Or are they too silent to answer? He's kind of playing off the idea of the silent watchers.
Yeah.
He goes, we might as well do it here and save ourselves a long tramp. He's like, why risk walking another 90 miles if we could just do it here? And Gollum's essentially like, hey, quit joking around. It isn't funny. It's not amusing. It's not easy to try to get into Mordor at all. But if Master says I must go or I will go, then he must try some way. But he must not go into the terrible city. Oh no, of course not. This is where nice Smeagol helps, though no one tells him what it is all about. Smeagol helps again. He found it. He knows it. And that's when Frodo's like, what did you find? Exactly. And this is where Smeagol gives the description of the path. He goes, a little path leading up into the mountains, and then a stair, a narrow stair. Oh, yes, very long and narrow. And then more stairs, and then a tunnel, a dark tunnel, and at last a little cleft, and a path high above the main pass. It was that way that Smeagol got into the darkness, but it was years ago. The path may have vanished now, but perhaps not. Perhaps not.
Sam thinks it sounds too easy. And he even kind of catches a gleam in Gollum's eye because, Gollum is concealing the fact that there's a horrible monster waiting for them.
Yeah, he kind of. Oh, I mean, yeah, and Sam has heard him talking to himself about
Right.
Chi, and so he's like, he knows there's something that he's holding back still.
Yeah. We get a little history where Frodo says, didn't you escape out of the darkness? You weren't just permitted to depart upon an errand. That's what Aragorn thought. And Gollum really hates Aragorn.
Yeah, he goes, it's a lie.
It's a lie. He lied on me. Yes, he did. I did escape, all by my poor self. Indeed, I was told to seek the precious, and I have searched and searched. Of course I have, but not for the black one. The precious was ours. So he can't even, he sort of tells the truth there. It's really weird.
He's like, yeah, Sauron commanded me to find it and bring it back to him, but, I'm the one who chose to leave, all right? I wasn't forced to go anywhere.
I mean, it's the same kind of lie as the oath on the ring.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, he's talked himself into it. He is a liar, but I think genuinely believes, at least a significant enough part of himself believes his own lie.
Yeah, and Frodo feels sort of certain that Gollum is probably not so far from the truth, that he some way had found his way out of Mordor. Or at least believed that it was. Frodo noted that Gollum used the word I, and that
Instead of
usually when
we.
he says I instead of we, it means something, that he's being a little more earnest, and that there was some truth or sincerity there that could be trusted.
Yeah, it says the escape may have been allowed or arranged, and well known in the Dark Tower. In any case, Gollum was plainly keeping a good deal back. And so he asked him again. He's already asked him earlier directly. He goes, this is Sam said, sounds too easy at any rate. If that path is still there, it'll be guarded too. Wasn't it guarded, Gollum? And Gollum never fully answers this. And so now Frodo asks a second time, I ask you again, is not this secret way guarded? But it seems like mentioning Aragorn at all has put Gollum in this kind of sullen, pouty, kind of petulant mood. It goes, he had all the injured air of a liar suspected when for once he has told the truth or part of it. He did not answer. That might be my favorite line in the entire book. I think about this line all the time. He had all the injured air of a liar suspected when for once he had told the truth or part of it. That's just such a keen insight into human nature. Someone who is a boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, the time they tell the truth, they're like, well, you didn't listen to me when I told the truth.
They're injured by the distrust of people that they've actively lied to for a long time. When they finally tell the truth, when they're not trusted, rightfully, they pout.
It's like the truth itself judges you,
Yeah.
Like your use of the truth judges all your lies.
Yes. And for that reason, you feel the need to
then you feel guilt.
become interior and kind of passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he does. Again, Frodo asks, this is the third time now. He says, is it guarded? And Gollum gives this very passive aggressive response. He goes, yes, perhaps. No safe places in this country, he says sulkily, but master must try it or go home. No other way.
Then we get a big zoom out, which I really enjoy. The narrator says its name was Cirith Ungol, a name of dreadful rumor. And then it says, Aragorn could have told them its name. Gandalf could have warned them, but they were alone. Aragorn was far away. Gandalf stood amid the ruin of Isengard and strove with Saruman. Maybe this is literally happening right now.
I think it is. I in my notes here, I wrote that this is a way of establishing where they are in relationship to the timeline that we've already been shown.
Yeah. And it says that even as Gandalf spoke his last words to Saruman, and the Palantir crashed in fire upon the steps of Orthanc, he still was thinking of Frodo and Sam, and that his mind sought for them in hope and pity. And then this is so fascinating. Maybe Frodo felt it, because Frodo has to make a choice now. And this reminded me of, the choices that they made or failed to make at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, and, Aragorn's inability to make a choice and their kind of confusion after Lothlorien, that they don't have the guidance that they need, and that they're up against an evil choice. Which way should he choose? No matter what they do, they're led to terror and death. What good lay in choice? But you're forced to choose. You can't just stay suspended, right, between in some kind of unresolved quantum state, right? And this is such a, I don't know, I think profound meditation on what life is like sometimes. That sometimes there's not a good choice. And sometimes you make a choice and you could have made the other choice, but once you make the choice you make, you're on the path and all you can do is walk it. And so, and it's not always as dire as, standing, before the teeth of Mordor, but I certainly think that if you're engaged in your life at all, you are faced with this kind of existential riddle.
Absolutely. I think that's a great insight. And I thought this section here, I think, is really interesting. He's like, how should they enter it? That's Mordor. At the last, Gandalf had not said. Perhaps he could not say. And it says that, he had gone into the fastness of Mirkwood, Dol Guldur, but he had never himself, Gandalf had never ventured into the land of Mordor and the Mountain of Fire and to Barad-dûr. And if Gandalf can't do it, how is it that Frodo is supposed to do it? Like, he's
Yeah.
asking himself this question. And it says, here he was, a little halfling from the Shire, a simple hobbit of the quiet countryside, expected to find a way where the great ones could not go or dared not to go. It was an evil fate. But he had taken it on himself in his own sitting room in the far off spring of another year, so remote now that it was like a chapter in a story of the world's youth, when the trees of silver and gold were still in bloom. This was an evil choice. Which way should he choose? And if both led to terror and death, what good lay in choice? Like, he just wants to go back home. And I don't know why it's like striking me as so sad now. Um, that's all he wants, and he's doing it to protect his home and the beauty of the world. But he's never actually going to ever be able to return home.
Yeah. He's changed so much that
He's too deeply wounded. And there are some wounds that are just too deep to ever fully heal from. And that's his real sacrifice. Even though he, like, through his, like, incredible effort and the help of his friend, he's going to be able to, destroy the ring. He's never really able to heal from his trials.
well, I think that's true of Frodo. It's true of all of us. When you leave home forever. Your experiences ultimately change you to the degree, maybe not to the same degree as Frodo, but to the degree that when you return, you have changed in a way that means that home is a different place than it was before you left.
I think Tolkien understood that from personal experience, but also from studying these myths that he knew so well. I think that's maybe the story that we tell. The hero who leaves but can't really ever return.
Right. I also think it's true, Sam and more becomes the sort of center or star of the story. And he returns to the Shire, and he's not wounded in the same way that Frodo is, but when he returns to the Shire, he makes a new home for himself, right? With Rosie Cotton, and he has to kind of plant the Shire with trees, and he comes back home, and he doesn't just go back to living with Hamfast, right? He comes back home, and he
has to heal the hurts.
Yeah, he has to plant like a new stake to make
Yeah.
the place his own again.
Yeah.
Frodo can't do that. Frodo is morally injured in a way that Sam isn't, but it is sad because we lose a piece of ourself, or we lose, a part within us that is always going to feel nostalgia or homesickness, or, is going to be less than whole because of that change.
I think that's right. So Frodo doesn't make a decision immediately. He sort of sits kind of measuring his options. But while he's still kind of internally deliberating, they see 4 winged Nazgul leave over the gates of Mordor high in the sky. And they are remote and exposed. And I think this sort of spurs them into action. Sam asked the question. He goes, "Those riders are about again, up in the air. I saw them. Do you think they could see us? They were very high up. And if they are black riders, same as before, they can't see much during daylight, can they?" But Frodo's like, "No, I mean, their horses could see." So there's like a little more like Nazgul lore here. They couldn't see very well during the day, but their horses could. And he's like, now these winged steeds seem to be...
They can see even better. Yeah.
Yeah, they're even more powerful than their former steeds. They are looking for something. The enemy is on the watch, I fear.
I think this next piece is so fascinating that after the feeling of dread passes when the Nazgul fly off, they're in silence, and it feels like they're cut off from the world on an invisible island. But now they were laid bare again, and peril had returned. But still Frodo did not speak or make his choice, and it says, his eyes were closed, as if he were dreaming, or looking inward into his heart and memory. That made me think of like elf sleep.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Yeah.
To like look into memory, to like dwell inwardly and find whatever the spark of the divine within that like helps you finally make that like existential choice.
It's a very elvish like posture. He's sort of meditating on what to do next. But then it says, at last he stirred and stood up and seemed that he was about to speak and decide. But then he says, hark, what is that? And it seems that some of these forces that are gathering around the gate have come close to where they are. It says, they heard singing and hoarse shouting. At first it seemed a long way off, but it drew nearer. It was coming towards them. And they're worried that, this is a sign that they have been seen by these winged Nazgul. And Frodo and Sam even loose their swords and prepare to make a stand because, it says flight was impossible. But Gollum slowly slinks away towards the noise to see what it was. And they see that it is new people coming in. I think these are the Southrons. These are the people who were about to see the Swartings, the people who we're going to see next chapter, that Faramir and his men are going to engage in a battle. But Gollum says, more men going to Mordor, dark faces. We have not seen men like these before. No, Smeagol has not. They are fierce. They have black eyes and long black hair and gold rings in their ears. Yes, lots of beautiful gold. And some have red paint on their cheeks and red cloaks, and their flags are red, and the tips of their spears. And they have round shields, yellow and black with big spikes. Not nice. Very cruel, wicked men they look. Almost as bad as orcs and much bigger. Smeagol thinks they have come out of the south beyond the great river's end. They came up that road. They have passed on to the Black Gate, but many more follow. Always more people coming to Mordor. One day, all the peoples will be inside.
Should we talk about the dark faces?
Oh, I was hesitant to even bring it up. Yeah.
So Tolkien, I think, is trying to establish that these guys are from somewhere else. They're from the south. We also find out that there's other forces from the east. And up until now, all of the humans who we've met have been kind of obviously European in some respect. But these folks are from somewhere else. They're from the south. And so, in the way that Middle-earth comports to our own world, they're going to be people who have darker complexions than the humans we've seen so far. I think you also wanted to point out that this is in the voice of Smeagol.
It's not in the voice of Tolkien.
It's not the narrator.
No.
And it's not Frodo or Sam. It's Smeagol. And so, I think it's interesting that Smeagol says these are not nice, very cruel, wicked men they look. Smeagol thinks that about everybody.
Yeah. Also, like, you looked in a mirror recently, pal?
All that being said, like, racial categories are at play in Lord of the Rings. And I think that although I personally believe that race is entirely constructed sociologically, we still can't escape from the reality that race plays in our own world. And I think that would be even more true in, Tolkien's time. I don't believe that Tolkien is himself a racist, but I think the way that race functions as a ideology, theology, it invades everything.
Yeah, and I think it's important to sort of set Tolkien in his like kind of, he was part of the empire of, Great Britain, right? But he himself was like he was very proud of his island, and he was proud of his heritage there. He was very critical of the colonial enterprise of the empire, the British Empire. And I don't think that he was a supporter of the way that the British people kind of like took over, other places. I think he has complicated, because he is a man of his time. Like you might see some, like if you're reading his letters, you might get sort of some conflicting messages on this. But also, there was a moment when The Hobbit took off, and he was contacted by publishers in Germany inquiring whether he was Aryan or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, if you're asking if I'm Jewish, essentially, I regret to say that I'm not part of that proud and noble people.
Yeah, I love that.
Though I recognize their extreme contributions to the arts and to the world, and I have many friends who are. And basically, if you're saying that I can't be published because you need to make sure that I'm not Jewish, then you can off.
Right, exactly.
And it was a long time before The Hobbit was translated into German because of that. So I do think that there is like real evidence that he took principled stands against a kind of a racialized, or a race ideology.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to this next chapter, but I wanted to read it now, and because I'm sure we'll talk about it again. One of the most moving moments in the entire book, when Sam sees the dead body of one of these very people that are just now, being described in this chapter, who he sees fall after Faramir and his company kind of engage them in battle. It goes, "It was Sam's first view of the battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. He was glad that he could not see the dead face. He wondered what the man's name was, and where he came from, and if he was really evil of heart, or what lies or threats had led him into the long march from his home, and if he would not really rather have stayed there in peace." There's an empathy there. It's not, I don't think that Tolkien was racist. I don't think that he held to kind of like a race ideology. It's complicated because he was a, white academic in the 20th century. And
Right.
he certainly, I don't think we can judge him by 21st century perspectives on race, but he was a smart, empathetic person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those themes are fully present in the text. And I think that history will look back on him fondly as someone who took principled stands against those very ideologies. Even though, like, were we to write this today, we wouldn't choose to use some of these words to describe people from different countries.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. But what Sam is worried about is the Oliphants.
Yeah, he's not thinking about critical race theory or...
No. He really wants to see one, and Gollum says there aren't any. Sam then stands up, puts his hands behind his back, as he always did when speaking poetry. Maybe Bilbo taught him to do. And began...
Well, do you remember when he writes his little poem for Gandalf in Lothlorien?
Yeah, does he also put his hands behind his back then?
He stands and puts his hands behind his back, and
of course,
and gives a poem about his fireworks.
So at some point, somebody in the Shire saw an elephant, or at least heard about one, and wrote.
Someone knew someone who knew someone.
Yeah.
Who told someone who knew someone who saw an elephant.
So Sam says his little poem, recites his poem, and says, "That's a rhyme we have in the Shire. Nonsense maybe and maybe not, but we have our tales too. And news out of the South, He's kind of responding to Gollum. In the old days, hobbits used to go on their travels now and again, not that many ever came back, and not that all that was said was believed. News from Bree and not as sure as Shire talk, as the sayings go.
So that goes all the way back to Farmer Maggot and the hobbits that they meet in Bree, the Bucklanders' views on Hobbiton, and everything else, like all the little sayings they have for each other and their distrust for one another.
It's Sam's enthusiasm about Oliphants that finally delivers enough like lightness into the situation that Frodo can make a choice. Mm-hmm. He laughs, and the laugh releases him from hesitation. And I've heard Stephen Colbert say that his sort of vocation is to make people laugh because you can't laugh and be afraid at the same time. And that laughter will like freeze your like spirit, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's here.
It like shakes Frodo out of his perseveration, like his like impasse. This laugh, this little poem that Sam recites standing up like a school child, you know, it kind of shakes him out of his own self, and that's what gives him the chance to kind of break free from this impasse he's at. It reminded me of Gandalf's laughter a few chapters ago, when everybody else is enthralled by Saruman, and Gandalf laughs and calls him a fool, and that really breaks the spell on everyone else.
Exactly.
I think it's a really similar moment. And
Frodo says, "I wish I had 1,000 Oliphants with Gandalf on a white one at their head, and we'd break away into this evil land, perhaps. But all we've got are our own tired legs. Well, Smeagol, the third turn may turn the best. I will come with you." And Gollum says, "Soft and quick as shadows we must be." Which takes us into the next chapter.
This is good reading. Definitely some dense stuff in this chapter, but I think we hopefully did a sufficient job of kind of breaking down some of these complex themes that are coming together in this chapter. Thanks so much for reading along with us this week, once again on the Wayward Wizards radio program. Next week, we will be reading Book 4, Chapter 4 of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. If you want to help out the podcast, be sure and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure and check us out on YouTube. We love when you leave comments on our YouTube videos. It's a great way to engage with one another. If you want to learn more about the podcast, you can go to waywardwizards.com. And if you want to reach out to us directly, you can email us at info@waywardwizards.com.
And until next week, if ever you'd met me, you wouldn't forget me. If you never do, you won't think I'm true. But old Oliphant am I, and I never lie.
We'll see you next week.